Hello photo enthusiasts, this is a review of the Zeiss Loxia 50mm f2. This lens has been built by Zeiss according to the classic planar design with 6 elements in 4 groups, and basically it's a good idea to keep the element count down if possible. It is an all-metal construction, but it's not a hefty lens. On the contrary, it's rather elegant. The focus ring moves perfectly smooth, and the aperture ring gives you this nice feeling when metal is running on metal in perfect precision. There's a screw down here, hope you can see it, and turning it will put the aperture ring into clickless mode, which is very useful for videographers. The one thing I wished Zeiss had done differently, it's like, you see the whole lens is comprised of moving parts, which is making it very difficult to screw it on and off your camera. And what you might want to do as a workaround is, like, if you want to screw it on, you put your aperture ring at f2 and you can get a firm grip like this to screw it on, or otherwise if you want to screw it off, you put it to f22 and again you can get a grip like this. It's working like this, but I just wished Zeiss had done it differently, right? Comes with a metal lens hood that screws on like this, and as you can see, mine has already taken a major hit. I was like in the Swiss mountains with it, and coming to an area where it was like a little bit steep and rocky. I was actually hitting a rock, and that's why I'm leaving my lens hoods always on, like to protect the glass, and you see, it makes perfectly sense for me, right? So Zeiss wise, it's like a perfect fit for the Sony Alpha system. It's so tiny and well balanced on the camera. To be honest, I do not understand why someone is going for a mirrorless system like Sony and then puts a G Master in front of the camera. Nothing against the G Master, it's a good lens, but like size wise, it doesn't make any sense for me. If size does not matter, then one can buy a Canon and put an Otus in front of it, and one has like a divine combination. But for me, actually, size matters a lot, and like traveling with the Sony Alpha and like maybe 3 Loxia lenses inside of the bag, this is very okay size-wise and weight-wise. So you already know that this is an all-manual focus lens, and of course some people don't want to miss autofocus, and in many situations autofocus makes perfect sense. Like if you're shooting commercially, it's like so easy to put the autofocus in, even maybe the eye autofocus. And for me, however, photography is a hobby and I enjoy the process of taking photos. And my decision for manual focus is just because I'm enjoying the process, and having just a little experience in manual focusing, one can become rather fast at it. And the Sony Alpha system has got manual focus aids like the focus peaking and the focus magnification, which are making manual focusing very easy. But let's now see how this lens is rendering images. In the editing for this video, the quality of the photos was suffering a lot. I just put the link to the original photos down below the videos for you to check out the quality. So at 50mm, this lens is like very versatile. It's great for street photography. You can do cityscapes, even landscapes, good environmental portraits. And you can even take decent portraits with it. So usually when we're thinking about portrait lenses, we think about longer focal length, like maybe 85 millimeter, 90 millimeter. And some good studio portrait photographers, they even use a 150 millimeter for portraits. This is because the longer focal length is like, what it is doing is like it is compressing the image a little bit. So it's also compressing like the facial features, and this in general is a more flattering look to people, right? So for me, with a 50 millimeter, you can take like really nice portraits actually. Just like if I was doing a beauty shooting, right, where I want to make it really flattering, like then of course I would also take like the longer focal length. I'm not showing you lab photos here. I didn't take any lab photos, but just some examples of photos which I have taken. And this one, for example, was almost a snapshot. But you see the lens rendered the image with a nice tonality, sharpness, and the background is rather pleasing. Here you have got another street shot from Asia. As you can see, the focus was nailed okay, even though the boy was actually moving. The photo has been shot at f8. I think the light was not so perfect, but this moment, you know, it was like candid. It was like, I think it's a nice photo. So some have complained about the slow aperture or the slow maximum aperture of this lens. And however, like every lens design is a trade-off, right? And if there's one thing that is overdone, then it's bokeh. And do not get me wrong, I mean, I really love a good bokeh, and I love this painterly look which is coming from fast lenses, and but it's really overdone, and we have gotten used to it so much. You know, sometimes you can even see these photos when there's like a photograph of a guy who's like rough looking, right, with a 3 days beard and in a leather jacket, but then like the depth of field is so thin because the photographer was like used to doing it, and like the one shoulder is unsharp or the ear is unsharp, and the look, and like maybe the background is rather creamy, and for me this is a look that does not fit together so well with a rough looking man, or right. And so like creamy bokeh is not the holy grail when it comes to people photography. You might want to take a look at photographers like Sebastião Salgado. He's amazing, and in his photography usually everything is sharp, more or less. His compositions are complex, but they are so divine that like rendering anything unsharp would actually like rob the photo of some of its beauty. That said, the Loxia is already very sharp at f2, and it is increasing its sharpness noticeably until f6, and then it stays on a very high level, stopping all the way down. These photos here have been taken at f2, and I think we cannot complain about sharpness, right? Of course, some color grading has been applied, as you can see. Again, these are just some like real-life examples of photography, how I'm doing it, and if you want to have lab results, you can look at the MTF charts out there, or there are also other reviews of people who did lab results, right? These photos of a Japanese Buto dancer have been shot at f3. There was only a little side light, or like a weak side light, and the dancer was moving, so that I needed to find a compromise between aperture and shutter speed and ISO. However, as you can see, it was possible to get a good enough focus with manual focusing. So by the way, this is an advantage of using flash when taking photos with a model. Like your model, if she is experienced, like she sees the flash and then she knows that she can take the next pose, and which is making the process a little bit easier. Here in this black and white photo, you can see how nicely this lens renders tonal transition. You can also see that on one shot I have missed perfect focus. However, sharpness might be a little bit overrated. As you can see, this shot has got a nice quality to it, despite the lack of sharpness. So some photographers now have like realized that like sharpness is not like the only way to go. Thus there's also this trend now to vintage lenses, which might not be so very sharp, but which are having a lot of character to them. And take companies like My Optic, Görlitz as an example. You know, they're like good in the business now. This lens, however, delivers exquisite sharpness if you're looking for it, and like very nice contrast, and it renders tonality in an image so nicely and with a lot of micro contrast. The colors from this lens are very natural. A photographer friend of me was once telling me that the colors in Thailand would be so beautiful that it was impossible to capture them with, in a photo. And you know, like the golden roofs, the yellow and red flowers, the green of the forest and the blue of the ocean. Well, I think he was not using a Loxia. This lens really renders colors beautifully. And what I usually do in my workflow is I increase the contrast by maybe 3 or 5 points, and then contrast and colors are perfect for me. Here you've also got some examples of photos of landscapes which I had taken with this lens here in the Versaska Valley in Switzerland. But how about the bokeh? The bokeh of the Loxia 50mm has been described as busy by many others. And it is true, it is busy if you are photographing a busy background. You have to understand it's typically the Sonner design that is rendering with a soft and more feminine character. Planar design lenses as this one will render the bokeh with some texture to it. Well, it is a trend now to have like a soft bokeh, which is very creamy, and I think this is very suited if you're taking portraits of beautiful and delicate girl. This lens, however, has got a more masculine character to it, and this can be used as an advantage depending on what you're intending to shoot. And anyway, for me, this is not a lens which I'm trying to get a lot of background blur with. This lens for me shines at f6, and basically I'm using the aperture rather as a tool for gradation of sharpness than for creating a lot of bokeh. And like If you prefer a lens with a soft bokeh, there's also the Loxia 35mm, and this one is rather rendering the bokeh in a very soft and feminine way, right? So I think this lens is like a master's tool. It will not help you to hide your weaknesses as a photographer by blowing out the background completely. If you know, like if you want to hide the background because it's too ugly and you want like to take a portrait of your girlfriend in the driveway, but if you have got a good composition, it will render your image with great sharpness, good global contrast, wonderful micro contrast and tonality, and with beautiful colors, fringing, no aberrations. I mean, the only minus to this lens is like that it's a little bit difficult to screw it on and off. But I mean, apart from this lens really is absolutely amazing. I hope I could help you with your buying decision. At the time I'm making this video, there are not yet many videos out there about this lens. I hope there are coming more, so that you can build yourself a more rounded opinion. So please leave a comment, point out things which I left out, and thanks for watching, and bye bye.